Good morning and what's up, Tracy UMC? I hope you all have been having a great week. Happy Sunday. Today we're going to be talking about that's right, two of the commandments. The first one is, "You shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not make yourself an idol." So let's just kick it off. Let's do this thing. So the Ten Commandments have been important in the Jewish and Christian faiths. Muslims also have a version of it for themselves. They have been the subject of some controversy in the courts as to whether they should be displayed at government buildings. However, they do form the basis of our moral code in our country. Ted Koppel even paid tribute to them in 1987 in a commencement address in Duke University. He said, "We actually convinced ourselves that slogans will save us. Shoot up if you must, but use a clean needle. Enjoy sex whenever and with whomever you wish, but practice safe sex." Then Koppel gave his sharp rebuke. The answer to those is no. Not because it isn't cool or smart or because you might end up in jail or dying, but because it is just wrong. In its purest form, truth is not a polite tap on the shoulder. It's a howling reproach. What Moses brought down from from Mount Sinai were not just the 10 suggestions. The Old Testament actually includes more than 10 commandments. There are actually 613, and there are many books to explain the meanings of all 613, but the 10 commandments are special to both Judaism and Christianity. The 10 commandments are the core upon which the rest of the law was built, and the basics of living in harmony with God and human beings. The Ten Commandments are actually 10 ways to express love to our God. The Shema from Deuteronomy 6:5 reminds us that we shall love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. All the commandments hang on this command, Jesus said, and also to love our neighbor as ourselves. That is the second part of the 10 Commandments. It is 10 ways to love God and 10 ways to love our neighbors. A farmer whose corn crop hadn't done well decided to borrow from his prosperous neighbor's field. With a large sack tucked underneath his arm, his small son near his footsteps, with his small son near his footsteps, he hurried to a distant corner of the field. On arrival, he peered cautiously to the left, to the right, ahead, and behind, to make sure that he was not being observed. Just as he reached out a hand to pluck the first ear of corn, the boy spoke. "Daddy," he reminded, "you didn't look up." Love God and love our neighbor are tied together. Some of you may have seen the cowboy-style version of the Ten Commandments. The one I've seen didn't have them in their proper order, so I'm going to put them in their order. Maybe this version can help us remember them. 1. Just one God. 2. Put nothing before God. 3. Watch your mouth. 4. Get yourself to the Sabbath meeting. 5. Honor your ma and pa. 6. No killing. 7. No fooling around with another fellow's gal. 8. Don't take what ain't yours. 9. No telling tales or gossiping. And 10. Don't be hankering for your buddy's stuff. Now, in looking at the first two commandments, we see why we want to be moral and ethical people. It is because it is a response to a faithful and covenant God. Exodus 22 sets up the basis for our standards. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. The story comes from a pastor in Wisconsin. She says, I had a friend in college who was preparing to be a pastor. As he began to study and think about things, he found he had more questions than answers, and finally decided he wasn't sure that there was a God and couldn't, in good faith, just be a pastor. He said he wasn't sure about God, so he was going to put his faith in humans. Several years later, I saw him again, and he had really reached the point of despair because he decided he couldn't put his faith in humans either. He had no basis for belief or anything to build his life on. If we lose a belief in a God to be accountable to, we're in this life simply for ourselves. So why do we need to be ethical? Other than maybe worrying about ending up in prison, there's nothing else to really stop us. So let's look at the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. This is not just a passing acknowledgement of God. We may think to ourselves that this is an easy commandment to keep. After all, we're not surrounded by a bunch of pagans who worship other gods. There was, in Moses' time, belief in Baal. It was the god of winter storms and rains. Sometimes folks can get worship of God and nature mixed up, even today. And also, in Moses' time, there was belief in Anat, a warrior goddess. We can succumb to this temptation if we place our ultimate trust in the power of the strength of weapons and glorify war, or whatever. And there was, in Moses' time, belief in Ashtoreth, the fertility god. It doesn't take much looking around to see our society's preoccupation with sex as our salvation. Our goal for all of life, which is following after another god. Certainly, people can make a god out of money or just even having fun. Sometimes it even seems that we live in a life where responsibilities are just not that important. Interestingly, it does not call for obedience to a human leader or ruler, which would have been a common thing for other cultures of that time. See, God is the ruler, the ultimate authority. John Wesley said this, whatever is loved, feared, delighted in, or dependent on more than God, that we actually make a God of it. We want to make sure we keep the main thing. The main thing. I want to say that one more time so it's not confusing. We want to make sure we keep the main thing our main thing. The basis of our ethics and beings comes from God. Our primary purpose is to worship God in reality and through the services of our lives. The second commandment is, you shall not make yourself an image. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. The word is that it's used for image refers to imagine something carved from wood or stone, an idol, a statue. But it later also included metal, actually. Now I can see that was kind of confusing because I was kind of confused when I read it. I probably should read it over again real quick. So let me go back. It's talking about how we shouldn't make idols out of wood, of some like the Romans did. They built statues of their gods and not of the one true God. We shouldn't worship them through wood or stone or metal. The golden calf incident recorded in Exodus 32 definitely shows a violation of this commandment. We can break this commandment by making God into our own image. Making him something else than what he really is. Finally, we see tied to these commandments that we are to pass our faith to the next generation. God looks with favor upon those who do. There is a story of two men born close to the same time. Jonathan Edwards, well-known American preacher of the 18th century, was very committed to his faith. A researcher followed his descendants. He learned that out of 1,394 descendants came 13 college presidents, 65 professors, 60 prominent lawyers, 32 noted authors, 90 physicians, and 200 ministers of the gospel, and also 300 good farmers. Max Jukes, his counterpart, was the very antithesis of Reverend Edwards, for he was very notorious as a crook without principles or characters. The life histories of 903 of his offspring show that there were 300 delinquents, 90 prostitutes, 285 had evil diseases, and over 100 of them spent an average of 13 years in prison. It was estimated that the crimes and care of that one family cost the state of New York over $1 million, while Jonathan Edwards' family made contributions of unimaginable worth. The starting point of the church and of our lives as individuals, of our morality and ethics, is the worship of that one true God. So, I have some news. After speaking to the bishop again, we have been asked to hold off regular services until the 14th of June. So that's a little under a month that we still have to wait. But like he said, we hope and we pray that that's the last setback that we have. Because I'm sure, as you can all agree, that worship is just way better, and at least it is for me, and I get more out of it, even just being the pastor, being together. But yeah, so if you guys have any other questions, you can get a hold of me. My number should be on the website for our church. So just give me a call or text. If I don't answer your call at first, it's probably because I'm at the other job. But I leave a message or send a text, and I'll definitely get back to you. But like I always say in closing, miss you guys. Have a great Sunday. Have a great rest of the week. And I will see you all on Sunday.